Greetings, fellow Earthlings! With the COVID-19 pandemic as yet unresolved, we still can't meet inside our amazing Zeiss Planetarium at the Chabot Space and Science Center. However, we can still use nature's planetarium, also known as the real sky, to dress up warmly, step outside, tilt our heads back, and see at least some of the amazing things I'll be pointing out for you tonight. I'm of course talking about the constellations. There are people, animals, and objects up in the night sky. They've been there for millennia, but most people are unaware of them as they glide by unnoticed right over our heads every clear night. Tonight, we will amend this sad state of affairs and put you, the audience, on your first steps towards astronomical enlightenment. Begin. As you probably already know, the Earth has 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. Well, the constellations also have seasons, having to do with the Earth's yearly orbital path around the Sun. That and the fact that we can only see stars by looking away from the Sun at night, which changes our views of the stars throughout the year. Unfortunately, unless you're at a good dark sky site, and if the moon isn't too bright, most constellations will be somewhat hard to see fully, but most constellations have at least a few bright stars to help identify them, and the better your viewing location, the more you'll be able to see. A first good step to finding the constellations is done by knowing your compass directions. We can easily do this without a compass, using a star grouping that is quite easy to find: Cassiopeia, the Queen, also known as the Big W. Face the sky roughly 90 degrees to the right of where the sun had set and look almost straight up to the top of the sky and you'll see it. As you can see, Cassiopeia has 5 stars that make up the W shape, which is actually her throne. From this angle, it's kind of face down. The 6th star makes up the seat of the throne, which can be seen to have a rather unergonomic back. Off the tip of the more squashed end of the W, you might see another somewhat faint 7th star. Just connect the end of the W to that star and extend the line about 2.5 times until it comes to the semi-bright star, which is named Polaris and is otherwise known as the North Star. It's the only star in the entire sky that stays pretty much right where it is. So no matter what time of the night it is, or even what month of the year it is, all you need to do is face it, and you'll always be facing due north, with east directly to your right, west directly to your left, and south directly behind you. All of the other stars wheel around this pivot point anti-clockwise, making them appear to rise in the east and set in the west. This is, of course, an illusion caused by the Earth's rotation, which gives the appearance that the stars are moving, when in fact it is the Earth that's spinning. If you think of the Earth as a spinning top and you extend Earth's north polar axis straight up into the sky, it points almost directly at Polaris. Using Polaris, we found all the compass directions, but Polaris is also the end of the Little Dipper's handle, whose official name is Ursa Minor, the little bear, and our next constellation. It's a bit faint, but from Polaris you might be able to trace the curving handle of its bowl. The 2 brighter stars at the end of the bowl are called the Guardians because they seem to march around the North Star like protective sentries throughout the night. Using the non-squashed end of Cassiopeia, it points directly into the face of our next constellation, Cepheus the King, and yes, he is Cassiopeia's husband. At this time of the night, he's face up, but he's got a triangular crown, a squarish head with a pigtail at the base of his head, and he's smiling, 'cause he's the king. Rising midway up the northeastern horizon, we find Auriga the Charioteer. He's easy to spot because of his bright eye star, Capella. It's just his head in profile, but he's got a triangular hat, a hooked nose, his bright eye Capella, and the rest of his large head with big manly chin. To continue, let's turn our view to the south, like so. This will flip everything we've seen so far upside down and will enable us to find the rest of the night's major constellations more easily. To find our next constellation, let's first look for the asterism known as the Great Square. By the way, an asterism is not a constellation, but merely a familiar star grouping. The brightest star of the square is the head of Andromeda, the chain lady. She's got one star as her head, a torso, and one arm pointing away from her body with a couple of chains attached. The other foreshortened arm is curled down below, and she has one straight leg, while the other leg is up and bent at the knee. If the sky is dark enough, you might see a dim, fuzzy spot just off her knee. Binoculars can make it plain to see in even somewhat light-polluted skies. That's the Andromeda Galaxy, our nearest neighboring spiral galaxy at 2.5 million light-years from us, which makes it the furthest object that can be seen with the naked eye. It is on a collision course with our own Milky Way galaxy, but worry not. The collision won't happen for another 5 billion years, give or take a few hundred million. The other three stars of the Great Square make up the wing of our next constellation, Pegasus, the winged horse. His wing attaches to the rear end of his body, and he's got 4 legs, neck, and long horsey nose. To the left of Andromeda, we have her boyfriend, Perseus, the hero. He's got a tall, thin, triangular hat, a head, body, legs, and feet. His right arm is curled up behind him, while his left arm is reaching out for Andromeda's upper foot. Use binoculars or a small telescope to look about 1/3 of the way between the tip of his hat and Cassiopeia to find the double cluster, 2 very pretty and relatively compact open star clusters. Arcing relatively high above the southern horizon is a kind of invisible line where the zodiacal constellations can be found. This line is called the ecliptic and is also where the sun, moon, planets move along. This is why the zodiacal constellations were so significant to astrologers. Not that astronomy scientists believe in the pseudoscience of astrology, most don't, but astrologers were some of history's first astronomers, and for their early work, we are in their debt. Our first zodiacal constellation is Pisces, the Fishes. Pisces is also pretty faint, and you'd have to have a pretty dark sky to see it. But if you happen to be in a dark sky site, you can see it with its 2 fishes, one triangular and the other round, and the V-shaped fishing line that connect them. Our next zodiacal constellation is Aries, the ram. He is also somewhat faint, but as you can see, he has a small triangular head, body, cute little tail, and outstretched front and rear legs as though he's running around in the starry fields. Located between Aries and Pisces, you'll notice a somewhat bright reddish star, which isn't a star at all, but the planet Mars. If you ever get a chance to see it through a telescope, do it. Sometimes, if the seeing conditions are good, you can actually see some of its dark surface markings or its polar ice cap. Up next on our line of zodiacal constellations is Taurus, the Bull. He's got a big, somewhat triangular-shaped head, 2 horns, front and back legs, a body, and a tail. Take a look at the tip of his right-hand horn, and you'll notice it's not a single star, but a small cluster of stars that kind of resemble the Little Dipper. That is the open star cluster called M45, or more commonly, the Pleiades. The Japanese call it Subaru. And if you look at the medallion on the front of every Subaru vehicle, it shows those stars. Use the binoculars to look at it. It's actually quite beautiful. Our last zodiacal constellation, newly risen in the east, as constellations do, is Gemini, the Twins. This constellation is one of the easier to see, as it is composed of 2 very bright stars, along with the rest of all the stars that make up their arms, bodies, and legs. Leaving the ecliptic, I've saved the best for last, Orion, the hunter. This constellation is composed of the most bright stars of all the other constellations from both the Earth's northern and southern hemispheres, and is known by most people in the world. He's got a little tiny head, broad shoulders. He's holding aloft a somewhat faint club in one hand, while his other holds forth a shield. Then there's his famous belt of 3 stars, a sword hanging from his belt, and his legs and feet. If you look closely at his sword of 3 stars, you'll notice the middle star looks a bit fuzzy. Take another look with a pair of binoculars, and you'll see that it's not a star, but a fuzzy little smudge. A look with a telescope will reveal a cloud with striations and details. This is the Great Nebula in Orion, a place where new stars are being born, a sort of stellar nursery, if you will, and as you can see, quite beautiful. And that's it. There are other, smaller or fainter constellations out there, which I encourage you to look for using a good book and maybe a pair of binoculars too. Speaking of good books, I cannot more highly recommend the book, The Stars, A New Way to See Them, by the author H.A. Rey, who you may know as the same author who wrote the Curious George books. Rey was a scientist who wasn't satisfied with the way modern star charts were drawn. The astroscientists were not interested in the characters, objects, or stories behind the constellations, so for convenience they just connected the brighter stars into weird geometric shapes, slapped on their Greek names, many of which would mean nothing to the common person, and left it at that. That's all fine and well for them, but for us regular folk, we're more interested in the fun stuff. If you really want to learn the constellations, get Rey's book, which can be purchased from Amazon for about $12. I'd also recommend getting a pair of binoculars before getting a telescope. Binoculars are cheaper and easier to use, and there are many wonderful deep sky objects that can actually be best seen with just a pair of binoculars that are noted in Rey's book. If you do want to get a telescope, ask us or research on the web how to make an informed purchase. Be warned, there are a lot of bad telescopes out there with cheap components and shaky, muddy, fuzzy views that will disappoint you every time. If you're interested in getting into the hobby of astronomy, joining a local astronomy club can be most helpful. Chabot is partnered with EAS, the East Bay Astronomical Society, which has many activities and resources you'll find essential to help you get started in this amazing and beautiful study of our natural universe. Thanks for watching this video. If you like this content, be sure to click the thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell notification icon to find out when new content has been uploaded. This will really help our channel to grow, which would make us all very happy. And we'll see you in the future!